This is the Little Moments Count radio podcast, created in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. Each episode, you'll hear interviews with early childhood experts on how to support the important brain development that takes place in the first 1,000 days of life, just through little moments every day. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org/podcast. You are listening to WFNU LP 94.1 FM. It's Hogtown Community Radio. And it's Thursday at 5 p.m., which means that you are listening to So St. Paul, a show all about, you guessed it, my favorite city, your favorite city, our capital city, right here in Minnesota. It's the great city of St. Paul. On So St. Paul, we bring you all the great people, events, things that are happening in our capital city. I'm your host, Katie DeSalle, and I am here every Thursday from 5 to 5:30, bringing you the best St. Paul has to offer. This episode of So St. Paul is presented in partnership with Little Moments Count and Minnesota Public Radio. Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative focused on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of brain development in the first 3 years of life. Nearly 80% of brain growth happens in the first 1,000 days, and small moments of interaction like talking, playing, reading, and singing help create the pathways that build a child's brain during this early stage of life. For more information, you can visit littlemomentscount.org. On today's show, we are talking with a very accomplished woman, Taylor Surratt. She's an educator and literacy advocate based here in Minnesota. She's the founder of Read With Me Minnesota, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to amplifying local authors and illustrators, increasing access to culturally relevant children's literature in schools and communities. She's got her master's in literacy, and she's passionate about closing the literacy achievement gap and ensuring that all children see their identities reflected in the books they read. Through author visits, book donations, and community partnerships, her organization's work centers on building inclusive classrooms and strengthening connections between schools, community spaces, and local creators. Taylor believes that representation in literacy is not just meaningful, it's foundational to student engagement, belonging, long-term academic success. Let's welcome Taylor. Thank you for being here. For our listeners who may be new to your work, can you share a little bit about what Read With Me is and what inspired you to start it?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So Read With Me Minnesota is a local literacy nonprofit, and our whole mission is centered around the importance of culturally relevant texts and how that translates into student engagement and specifically literacy acquisition. So our goal is to close the literacy achievement gap through culturally relevant texts written by local authors and illustrators. And we partner with them to get their books into schools. We do different literacy events in schools and also within the community.
And to clarify, when you say culturally relevant texts, is that like literature, if it's like a Black author and there's maybe like a Black audience, or can you describe more a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, great question. So when I reference culturally relevant texts, that's texts that have different cultures that are represented in our community, whether that's racial representation, linguistic representation, different family structures, all the basically underrepresented categories of people that can see themselves in the people that they love in stories.
Little Moments Count, we talk a lot about representation and window and mirror books. For people who may not be familiar with window and mirror books, can you talk a little bit about what those are?
Yeah, absolutely. So the concept of windows and mirrors, and in addition to that, sliding glass doors is also a piece of that, was written by Rudine Sims Bishop in 1990. She's an educator, and she published an essay about that. And essentially, windows are when children can see other people through a book or a story and learn about other people and build empathy and someone that they would have not learned about before. And then books that are mirrors are where we or children can see themselves represented through a story. And then sliding glass doors is when people can enter like a different world. So like fantasy and kind of imagine in that way.
What are some examples of books and maybe authors that you guys partner with that would be good examples of window, mirror, and sliding door book?
Yeah. Oh man, so many. I think one thing I want to share through doing this work with Read With Me Minnesota, and we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary earlier this month. So we've only been around for a year. Well, one thing I've learned is our literacy community is incredible, and specifically our literacy community of artists and authors and illustrators of color. We have incredibly talented people here that really care about the work that they are doing, and all they want is to get their books into schools. So it's hard for me to just name a few, but I will highlight some. One author we just had a author visit with last week. Her name is Janet Nelson, and she wrote a book, My Friends Around the World. And the reason I'm highlighting this book is because I feel like if this book could be in every single school in Minnesota, it would capture so many of our students. So in this book, there's a young girl that immigrates here to Minnesota from Kenya. And she's talking about all of the friends that she's meeting. And these are friends from all around the world. And so each page is a different friend. And there's friends from Somalia, friends that speak Karen and Karenni, friends that are Hmong. Like, it's hitting a lot of the big populations that we have here in the Twin Cities. And also she talks about she has friends still back in Kenya. And so like that connection back to where you were maybe from, or you still have family there. And it really highlights the different languages that we have here. And one of my favorite parts about it is each child talks about what they want to be when they grow up. And so there's also that representation of the different types of people and like dreaming of who they can be in their future. So that's just one example. That book in and of itself hits all of the things. It hits the mirrors, it hits the windows. They get to learn more about maybe a family down the street that they haven't gotten to know yet. And now that they have some language behind that, they get to see themselves represented in the book. So that's, if our mission could write a children's book, it probably would be that one. So
great. Do you get to see any responses from either children or parents or educators after reading any of these books?
As an educator myself and starting this organization as an educator, I knew how it would impact the children. I knew that it would increase their engagement. I knew that they would love it because I've seen it firsthand in the classroom. And I, of course, have done the research and read the research. But what I didn't really expect is the reaction from adults in the room. I always knew that children's books were not just for children, but I've had responses from teachers and grandparents and other parents brought to tears because it's their first time seeing themselves represented in a children's book. Mm-hmm. And I've had people come up to me and they're like, that was me. That was me as a little girl. And it can be very emotional because it's very healing, not only for the adults to like heal their inner child, but also to see this next generation grow up in a world where they don't know what it means to never see yourself in a story in the library or at school. And so the responses can be very emotional sometimes, but the increase in engagement is like very palpable. I've had teachers share with me after we've given them a teacher book set. Teachers reach out to us. They tell us about their classroom library and like any gaps they have in their classroom library as far as representation goes. And I had a teacher share with me that they did kind of like a book walk of all the new books. And then they all got to vote which book they were going to read that day because they were like all excited. And she shared that the votes for the books were a direct reflection of the students. Mm-hmm. Like the students that saw the Black children that saw Black characters wanted to read that book. The Asian children that saw Asian characters wanted to read that book. And she was like, it was so telling that they connected
Yeah.
with the story and wanted to read more. And when you think about the literacy crisis that we're in, and you think about the history of the kinds of books that have been available for children that are in reading interventions and like having a hard time to read, you're putting a book in front of them that's like Jill and Tom at the Fog. And not only do they not want to read because it's hard, but they have no connection to that book. There is truly a direct connection to students' engagement in their learning and wanting to engage with something.
So you talk about the importance of children seeing themselves being represented in media. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about those early years, like the first 5 years and brain development. And from a literacy and learning perspective, what's actually happening in their brain during that time?
Yes, I have my undergrad in early childhood education. So this is just my I love talking about such the critical first 5 years of children's lives. It truly is critical. There's so much growth happening. They're taking in more than we even realize sometimes. And the name of the game for those first 3 years is connection and language. That takes a little bit of like that pressure off of feeling like you need to be doing XYZ. Like if you are connecting with your child and if you are building their language, you're checking a lot of boxes. And those first 3 years, children are looking for those moments of connection and looking for those moments of engagement and being present and talking and singing and playing helps with so much development and hits a lot of those pre-literacy skills.
What about for people like busy parents, people who don't feel that maybe they don't have an early childhood education background? What are some easy things that parents can do or caregivers can do to make those connections in those early years of life?
We are all really busy and parents are incredibly busy. And it's not about, okay, I have to set X amount of time aside to work on this skill. It's about how can I take advantage of what I'm doing already every day in the mundane things and engage and connect in the best way. Maybe it's at the grocery store. You're walking through the grocery aisle. There's literacy everywhere, talking about what you see on the cereal box. When you're driving in the car, what you notice during diaper changes or any part of the day you're singing, they're hearing rhymes, they're repeating sounds, like all of these things are incredibly impactful and can just be added on to what you already have to do. You have to change diapers. And so we might as well sing some songs while we do it and encourage that language. And another thing that I think is so important to remember for not only child development, but for like parents is make sure you're laughing every day and like making sure there's joy that you're bringing in. I know as a teacher, and this is not something I only do, but in those moments where I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'll just like sing. It just like, it helps me. Like I'll just like sing my thought and it helps me kind of like work through it. And I know I'm not a parent, but I do know that that's another tactic that some of my friends use too. Let's just sing and we make it joyful. And those little moments, no pun intended, count. So yeah.
I'm a big, how about like storytelling and reading with young kids? What's the best way for a family to like get started with that? Is it just, nighttime, bedtime stories? Are there things that parents can do to like build those literacy skills early on?
Yeah, absolutely. Big fan of bedtime. I think that routines are a really big deal. And I think that it's a great opportunity to like sit and snuggle and like relax your body and read a story. So bedtime every night, children expecting a story to however much you want to read. I'm like, if you want to keep reading, we can keep staying up. That's cool with me. Bedtime is great for reading, but I think the art of storytelling has like been lost a little bit. Like when we think about reading, it's so much more than just children are seeing the letters on the page. They're understanding that you read from left to right. Like all of these things are important. However, reading is so much more than just like the words and the letters on the page. It's about connecting and talking and the language and the vocabulary that they build. And you can do storytelling when you're driving. You can do storytelling even without a book in front of you. So I think if you think about the art of storytelling from history, where people told these stories orally, like that is a little bit of a lost art of like just oral storytelling that parents, it's a good reminder that you don't always have to have a book. You can make up a book with your child. You can look at a picture and create a story about it. And so I think there's also that piece of storytelling that you can use without a book.
Great. Why did you start Read With Me? What was inspired you to do it?
Yeah. So I started my career in Chicago public schools. And my first year teaching, I was teaching pre-kindergarten, and I had 10 different languages in my classroom. And I was like a first year teacher, like ready to just do all the things I just learned in undergrad. I knew the importance of representation. And I started at a school that didn't have a library, didn't have a librarian. Classroom library had little to no representation. It was challenging as a teacher. And then as I started to do more research and talk to other teachers and talk to people of color and what that looks like for our community, there is a big gap. The way that the education system is set up right now, it is majority white educators. And we cannot rely on educators of color to be the only people pushing this narrative. And so as a white educator, as I continued through my years of teaching, it was a priority for me to try to find books where my students were represented, because I saw a direct impact on what that looked like in the classroom. And I couldn't rely on our curriculum, and I couldn't really even rely on our classroom library or library if we even had it. Luckily, through the years, there has been a huge push for more diverse books and representation, like the start of the organization, We Need Diverse Books. This became something that I was really passionate about, and I saw a huge need. And so I went to grad school, got my master's in literacy, and I wrote my capstone and like catered my experience to specifically how culturally relevant text impacts student engagement and literacy acquisition, because I saw it with my own eyes in the classroom, and I was very interested in seeing like the actual research behind it. And of course, it was there. I started it as a passion project. It was just a need that I saw in the schools that I taught. It was a need that I saw with our community, like talking to local authors and illustrators. They're like, all I want is my books to get into schools. Like, how do I do this? Like, how do I get connected? And schools wanting authors to come in and wanting more books, but not having the funding. So what started as a passion project has turned into something much bigger and something much more, because the need is so high. And so in our first year, we, donated at this point, I think almost 1,000 books, and we had over 20 events last year. I was inspired by my students. I was inspired by the research and understanding what is happening in the schools and the need that's there. And we have great literacy community here and a lot of different literacy organizations that are pushing this work forward. But our niche is very specific in the work that we're doing. And so we're excited to keep continuing this work. And it's interesting, as a nonprofit organization, my goal is that we will no longer be needed. Like, I hope that one day we don't have to exist. There doesn't need to be someone to make sure that our children in our schools and communities are represented and like feel represented, and that our local authors and illustrators feel like their stories matter, and like the publishers know that. That's the goal. The goal is that we don't have to exist one day, and that's not something that we have to worry about. The reality is it's very, very real.
What's some of the research that you came up on your capstone project, like some of the statistics that really forced you to like take a stand and do something about it?
Yeah, there was research done, and I wish I knew who did this research. I probably should know off the top of my head, but I just read so many research articles. Was about comparing children in the reading intervention groups that I was mentioning. And it took children that were from like an inner city school, and they created curated reading intervention materials based off of their life and like their interests. And the reading scores like skyrocket just from that alone. Because if you don't have engagement, you don't have learning. And that is just the reality. And the best way to get children engaged is to put something in front of them that they are interested in, that they can connect with, and that they want to learn more about. And so the research basically compared a study of children who used the like regular curriculum reading intervention materials, and then a group of children that used materials that were specific to their like culture and their interests. And like the results were just astounding. You're putting children in front of reading materials where reading is already hard for them. It's already something that they are very disengaged in because it's challenging. And then you're throwing something that they don't care about. And so I do think that this putting more culturally relevant texts in front of children will make an impact on our literacy rates, but also at the same time, tell children that they matter and that they belong. And that is also a huge part of learning, feeling safe and feeling wanted and feeling, that you belong and that you matter. The research just emphasizes how those books do really make a difference on literacy acquisition. And it does make a difference on engagement and self-confidence in general.
Great. I'm curious, as an educator working in schools and with this administration and having kind of the pushback of, I'd say maybe like the whitewashing of history, getting rid of some of the curriculum that teaches different cultures. As an educator and someone who works with authors and literature for young kids, are you intentionally pushing back against the kind of DEI rollback? Are there things that you or other educators are doing to teach children their history?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I'm looking forward to hopefully a day where this work doesn't have to be like more important than ever. Like we've been saying that since we started, like right now, this is more important than ever because of what's happening in the administration. And then now what's happening into our communities in the Twin Cities, it feels like even more now important than ever that children know that their voices matter and that the authors and illustrators know that their voices and their stories matter, because if you look outside, there are so many things telling them that they don't. And yes, the work that we're doing is a direct fight back at what is happening from, unfortunately, the Department of Education of our country. And the nice thing about being a nonprofit organization, we can get these books into schools and they're not being purchased by school funds. And there's a lot of fear around that, where schools are putting their funding towards anything that would fall under DEI, and it's our way of pushing this work forward without it under the school's funding. And so, yes, there are many ways that like we as educators are fighting back, because we see this every day and we know the impact that this is going to have if we keep on the trajectory that they're trying to continue.
For people who are listening and either they're an author or maybe they are working in school, or someone just who wants to know more about Read With Me Minnesota, what's the next steps to connect with you guys or find out more information?
Yes. So first place to go is our website, which is readwithmemn.org. And that's the same handle for all of our social media. We're probably the most active on Instagram, so at readwithmemn. We also have a variety of community events that we do regularly. So once a month, every third Saturday of the month, we meet at Cafe Marguerite, which is a cafe in Northeast Minneapolis. And it's a free story time from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. We have a local author that comes out. And it's also a partnership with the Omega Sci-Fi Fraternity Epsilon Rho chapter, it was started essentially as like a book club where they just wanted to show Black men reading to children. And so every event, the local author reads their book. We give away 5 free copies to the first 5 families. And then one of the brothers from the fraternity reads another book to the children. So that's one place you can find us every month. Other than that, we do have an annual fundraiser coming up in August. I know that's kind of far away, but we're in full planning mode, where we highlight local artists and local illustrators and youth artists. And it's an amazing night at the Hennepin Theater Trust in downtown Minneapolis. Highly recommend coming out to that and like celebrating with us the work that we've been doing and being in community with like-minded people and celebrating artists and authors and illustrators. And it's always a fun night. So, but mainly head to our website and you can find our contact information there and any upcoming events. We love hearing from people in the community, whether you like have an idea for us, if you have a connection to a local author or illustrator we might not know about. If you just want to share some ideas, we have only been around for a year, so hearing from our community is really important. If you're a teacher, if you go to our website, there's a way that you can fill out a teacher book set interest form, an author visit interest form. So if you can't find what you're looking for, always email us and either I or someone from our board of directors will get back to you.
Is there anything I didn't ask that you think is important that people should know?
I did want to mention one thing that I don't feel like gets talked enough about. I did want to share when people are thinking about diverse books and expanding their library or thinking about what books they want to bring into schools, there's something that I guess people in the community are sharing. It's called like everyday representation. Oftentimes the stories are rooted in like the history and like unfortunately the struggle and like the trauma and like groups overcoming things, which is important. Like those stories are important, but I encourage parents and educators, especially like white educators and white parents, to think about those books that have everyday representation of different communities just doing children things, like kids of all background doing everyday things that kids do, like going to the dentist, having birthday parties. And I think the joyful representation and doing ordinary things, because I think that those, while history is important and those stories should be amplified, it is important to just see children being children and like that everyday representation in books. So I just wanted to encourage parents and educators to continue looking for those books as well for their libraries.
Great. I really appreciate you coming on and letting our listeners know all about Read With Me and your story behind it. It's really inspiring. Well, thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited that you are all doing the work that you're doing. I look forward to keep partnering with you in the future.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for coming on So St. Paul right here on WFNU LP 94.1 FM. It's Frogtown Community Radio. I'm your host, Katie DeSalle, and I'll be back next Thursday from 5 to 5:30 p.m., bringing you the best that St. Paul has to offer. Thank you again to Taylor Sorrells from Read With Me, Minnesota. You can hear a recording of this show at littlemomentscount.org/podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Little Moments Count, you can visit their website at littlemomentscount.org. Thanks for listening to the Little Moments Count radio podcast in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. You can find the Little Moments Count radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts and at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.